Welcome to the Gift of the Struggle. I am Elizabeth Denham, and I'm here with John Hayes, who I've known for quite a few years now and has graciously allowed me to interview him about some of the things he's gone through in his life. But first, let me give you a little background. Dr. Hayes has been a franchisor for more than 40 years. He's advised franchise companies internationally. He's written multiple books on the subject of franchising. Currently is at Palm Beach Atlantic University, working at the Titus Center for Franchising. He's built that program and has graduated. I think you're up over 100 students now from this program, right? With a concentration in franchising.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a well-esteemed franchise professional, author, and professor. But today we are here to talk about some of the things that has kind of led him to this point of life and some of the things that he's experienced. Um, both tragedy and happiness and joy and how you get through those things. So John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate it. And while you were talking about what I've accomplished, I was thinking back to my childhood in Ohio at Dover St. Joseph's, where I attended for 12 years Catholic school, and thinking about the friends that I had at school or the people I went to school with. Um, and if they heard those accomplishments, they would have to laugh to themselves or shake their heads, saying, "Are you sure that was the guy who we went to school with?" Because nobody expected him to achieve anything, including the nuns, and even on some occasions, my mother and father. So, and I had a very big family, but this was a small town, Dover, Ohio, 20,000 people, many, many related, lots of Italians, lots of Irish, German. Wonderful, great place to grow up. It was perfect for me in so many ways. But I just wasn't, I was a fat kid who was horrible at sports, who didn't have much going for him. And people didn't hesitate to tell me that. Didn't have girlfriends and lots of rejection at every level. And I wasn't interested in studying. And if there were, I graduated in a class of 45. I'm pretty sure I was in the bottom 10 of those 45. But the bar was also probably pretty high because there were some really smart kids in the class. So, in spite of me hearing um, that I wasn't going anyplace, I didn't have much talent, I needed to really think about getting serious about something, there was a voice that spoke to me. Not, it wasn't, it may have been God. I prefer to think it was God or a guardian angel, or somehow I had a protector who said, "Don't pay attention to that. Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. You're going to show them someday." And this happened really early. My father was a sports fiend. He wanted me to play football. He took me away from my sixth grade birthday party in August because on that night you had to go to the school to sign up for sixth, seventh, eighth grade football. I did not want to play football. He didn't ask me if I wanted to play football. If a girl would hit me, if you come and hit me, Elizabeth, it's going to hurt. I don't know why it hurts, but it's going to hurt. I don't like that. I don't want to be hit in the nose or the face or anywhere. So I was the only sixth grader. And I was in the eighth grade, I was 180 pounds. So I don't know what I was in the sixth grade, 160 pounds maybe. I was big, fat.
Yeah.
I wasn't fast. Uh, my father was very good looking. My mother was a beauty. He from a big Irish family, she from a big Catholic family. They were each one of nine. I signed up. And I lasted maybe a day or two of practice when my cousin, who was in the eighth grade, who I thought would be gentle in this tackling practice, when he just literally ran over me and pushed my face into the dirt. I had a helmet on and I had pads on. It hurt physically and emotionally. And I hope I didn't cry, but maybe I did. But I went home and I said, I have to quit. And my father said, well, maybe it's a little young. You're the only sixth grader. Maybe you need to wait a year. And I was saying to myself, no, I'm never playing football again. That's too hard. And when I didn't play in the seventh grade, we went through a long spell where we just avoided each other. I would cross the street when he was coming up the street. The school was not very far from my house. And when he was coming, I saw him coming, I would cross the street so that I could pretend like I didn't see him and I wouldn't talk to him. Because his big concern come August was, did you sign up for football? And I wasn't doing it. And I was in the Boy Scouts, and I remember I had to leave home really fast to go up to the school because the Boy Scout trip, we were gathering to get on the bus at like 5 o'clock, and he would get home at 4:30 from work. And I wanted to get out of the house before he got home because I knew he was going to pressure me and maybe not let me go on the Boy Scout trip. So I left and I forgot my food. You're supposed to have your own food for the weekend. And I left. And my mother knew that. He got home. She told him. And there I see, right before we're going to get on the bus, I didn't know I didn't have my food. There he is in the car. And he rolls down the window and he said, I have something for you. And he's my father, so I wasn't going to say no and just ignore him. And he said, you forgot your food. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. And he said, did you sign up for football? I said, no, I'm not signing up for football. I just took and I left. And that we just didn't have a good relationship then. In the eighth grade, when I weighed 180 pounds, my two best friends, who were the co-captains of the football team, and they were stars, they said, John, we need you on the line. You gotta play. I did again. And I lasted for about 8 games. And I just couldn't do it. And I quit with like 2 games to go. It was embarrassing. It was not a
Mhm.
good character quality, but I just couldn't take it. I was getting beat up and I was just afraid. It wasn't for me. And then it started in high school. The coach would say, going to coming in July for training to get ready for coach. I'm not playing football. I don't like football. It hurts. I'm not, and I got to go to work, which I had a job for $1 an hour and cleaning floors. And I said I need to save money to go to college. And he said, John, you play football for me. You will go to college on a scholarship. And I'm thinking, that's the last thing I want. Play in high school, then play in college.
Yeah.
I did play my junior year again, pressure of friends. And fortunately, they were so good, the seniors. We were the Class A state champs of Ohio.
Wow.
And I only had to play occasionally when the score was like 40-0, and I could go in for the last 5 minutes. But then I became a senior, 6'3", 275 pounds, the biggest kid in Tuscarawas County. And everybody had great expectations for me. And I played. I lasted through the year, but I did not start. I just could not do it. I was afraid. And there are a lot of stories there about how I lined up against little guys and finally, once the coach came over to me and said, this guy, he weighs like 140 pounds. You're huge. Just fall on top of him. And the poor kid, he screamed so loud when I fell. But, that didn't feel good either.
Yeah.
That wasn't me. So the football thing wasn't for me. My parents were building a house one time in my senior year, and the contractor came by and met me for the first time. And he said, wow, you are a big guy. I bet you're really something on the football field. And my mother said, no, he's a bit of a disappointment at football. And yeah, okay. So I didn't get, girls didn't like me. I was too big, too fat, too whatever. I had guy friends, though probably one of my best friends, which made me self-conscious, was fat and homosexual. And my father was so concerned when I hung out with him. I wasn't homosexual. There was never anything sexual between us. I wasn't interested, and he never made any play for me. I don't think he wasn't interested in me. So that was a lot of conflict. I had an aunt on the Italian side who came up to me at one of our huge family parties, who said, Johnny, if you lose weight, you would be so handsome. And her nickname was Fatty because she was thin as a rail, and kids gave her the name Fatty when she. I said, "Okay, Aunt Fatty, thanks. I'll think about that." People were just insensitive, but the little voice, thank God, stayed there. And so my plan to get out of this, partially my plan, was I would become a priest. And I'd gone to a Catholic school. I was a server starting in the fourth grade. And my parents took me at the end of the eighth grade. That's when you go to the seminary. And they took me over to the seminary, Columbus, Ohio, and I got rejected by the seminary. So I had braces. They said, no, 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 you got to get those braces off before you come to seminary. And my grades just weren't good because I didn't care. So they said, you need to improve your math grade and your English grade. Go home, go to summer school. I thought, oh, wow, I get rejected. Now I got to spend the summer in summer school. And the teacher kept saying, because my grades were so good, I had the best grades in the summer school class for math and English. And he'd say, is this a joke? Why are you here? And that's when I realized I can do this. I'm as smart as the top 10 or the top maybe 5 to 10 in my class. I could be an A student. I don't want to be. I just wasn't interested. And I had a lot of emotional issues that fortunately I didn't go to drugs. Drugs weren't popular then. I graduated high school in 67. We're
Mhm.
starting, and there are just a lot of things I didn't know, but I knew somehow I was going to be okay. And that I went to college freshman year. I was accepted on probation because my grades weren't good. And I was told that I had to go to summer school, how to study, take a how to study course. I did well in that. In the first semester of my freshman year, I was asked by the campus dean, would you like to start we don't have a newspaper. Would you like to start the college newspaper? And this was at Kent State University, Tuscarawas campus, which was a
Mhm.
two-year feeder campus. So I started the newspaper because I had all A's in journalism in high school. That's what I wanted to do. I was going to get a degree. I was going to get a 2-year degree in business because my uncle said, if you do that, I'll hire you to sell insurance. Yeah, like I really wanted to do that, but I had no other offer. So I was, till I realized, no, 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 I'm going to be a writer. And I founded the paper. And in the spring semester of my freshman year, I was elected student body president for the next year. Two things that would have never happened to me in high school. And that gave me a lot of confidence.
Mhm.
And I also met the only girlfriend I ever had. And we were together for 50 years until she died. So it was only one woman in my life. I met her when she was 16. I was 18. We were married when I was 21. She was 19, and that lasted forever. So
Mhm.
there were a lot of good things. My, I only paid for 3 years of college. I had scholarships. Uh, Kent State paid for my graduate degree in journalism. Temple University paid for my PhD in American Studies. To even think that I could get a bachelor's degree. My parents told me when I was time to enter the Kent State as a freshman, said, your grades aren't very good. You're only going to go on probation. You need to look for a job because college probably isn't going to last, and we can't pay for it because I have 3 younger sisters, and then my parents were blue collar, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful family. In spite of things that happened along the way, they didn't mean to hurt me ever. And I said, okay, I'll get a job and I'll pay. And I paid, I only had to pay for 3 years because the fourth year, the publisher of the Kent Record Courier decided to reward me. He said, I'm going to pay for your senior year. Great. Kent State said, we want to pay for your graduate degree if you'll teach for us at on our Warren campus over in another county, Trumbull County, I believe. Did that. And then I got recruited at Temple, and they said, if you come here, we will pay for your PhD, which you need to have if you want to continue to be a college professor. You only have 7 years until you can't work here anymore. You'd have to go someplace else. So why not? I'll get a PhD. And no, I mean, and I'm sure people were saying, "Who are you talking about?" No, there's no way John Hayes has a graduate
Yeah.
3 years working on a PhD. Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing. I think you sound to me like a lot of young boys who go through these
Yeah.
ups and downs and
Yeah.
tumultuous times and expectations of fathers that are unmet. And a lot of it sounds to me like there probably was some bullying involved. And
Oh, I
it's
had that.
interesting to me what you say. You talk about the strain with your father and the expectations, but also what a wonderful family it is. And I think
Yeah.
that's such life. That's the complexity
Oh,
of families and relationships. And you can be hurt by people, but you can still admire and
yeah.
respect all the things that they do for you, right? And I think that is an underappreciated part of life lately, where
Yeah.
people tend to cut each other off so quickly and hold the flaws or the struggles against each other. But the setup for all of that, um, I think is so interesting when you talk about that inner voice, because I think we all have it to one degree or the other. And one of the things that I even struggle with is just listening to it. Every time I don't, I feel like I pay for it. There's always something I know to be true, and if I don't listen and I go against that, I regret that
Yeah.
happened. So you
Yeah.
seem to have this sense of knowing yourself really young.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
you didn't, even if you played a couple of times for football, you still knew that was not the place for you, and
Never.
you were able to articulate that even in your own head, and sometimes to your father. So how did all of that struggle? And the interesting thing too is you go through all that, and you're told you're not going to be a
No, you're not going to
college.
be anything. My
Yeah,
mother said you'll be lucky to get a job pumping gasoline. So,
yeah. And that kind of thing can really hold a
oh,
child back.
I mean,
So
people think
what do
that's
you think?
how devastating. What a wicked mother, but she was not a wicked mother.
Yeah.
Loved my mother.
Hmm.
And I kind of, because the voice said, no, 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 don't worry about that. You're going to be okay. You're going to show him. Well, my mother was the proudest mother you could imagine. So after, once I went on and became an
Well,
adult,
and people know they know their experience. And so you've got blue collar parents who haven't had that
yeah,
experience of
yeah,
higher education,
no
probably
education.
don't
Oh,
understand it to
yeah,
the full degree and
yeah,
how you're going to get there. And I think it says a lot that you were able to navigate that basically on your own. So
yeah,
how did this kind of inner knowing play out going forward in your life? Because over the years you've experienced, like you talked about, you were with your wife for 50 years and then
yeah,
she got sick and died. You've had a lot of death in your life, right? A
yeah,
lot of tragedy. So speak to that a little bit and tell us
yeah,
how
sure.
you get through that.
It was for a while I thought the voice was only there to save me from my childhood. That
Mm,
the voice kind of either I didn't pay attention, which could very well be the case because the voice is still there now, but
mhm,
it's not coaching me so much or encouraging me. I needed every bit of encouragement somehow because I had none.
yeah.
It was uh, J.D. Vance in his memoir, which is a wonderful book. Whether you like his politics or not, put that aside. Read his
Mhm,
book
mhm,
because he grew up as a hillbilly, so he was around drugs, and his mother was an addict, and he said there were men coming in and out of my life constantly, and he said that was the outside world. Fortunately, he had a grandmother who gave him security and encouragement on the inside family world. I didn't have that. What I had in my social world, I had in my family world as well. So I needed that voice to save me, or I don't know where I might have gone wrong. And then I didn't pay as much attention. Joanne and I met and we got married, and it wasn't, we were kids, so we didn't even know each other. She
mhm,
was my first, and I was her first in every way.
Hmm.
So, and we were proud of that. That we didn't have it. We didn't have the sexual experiences that our friends had
Hmm.
had. Then it was rocky because there was times when there just wasn't money, and fortunately, we didn't have a child for 3 years, and we only had three children, and we spread them out not by plan, by 7 years each. Why we did that, who knows? Uh, it just was the way it was. And we had a very natural flow, but we had our battles as well. We never broke up. We were never uh, separated in any way, or we didn't go to a divorce court. We just weren't going to do that. But we battled at various times because I was the provider, and Joanne was the provider of the family. And I knew that was important. But there were just times. I remember when when I took I was at Temple. I was an assistant professor of communications, head of the magazine writing program, making $12,500 a year in the
Hmm.
1970s, early 80s. I couldn't take a vacation. I couldn't afford. Maybe we could go to the Jersey Shore for a day or something with the kids, or we'd go to Ohio. We'd drive back to Ohio to take some time off. Just didn't have money. Unfortunately, I was a freelancer and I could double my income, but it still wasn't enough money to pay. And then my kids, we put them in private school, and I had to make the tuition. I was self-employed after a while. I had to buy my insurance, and it was just a lot that came down on me, and I wasn't good at managing a lot of that. And I don't know where the voice was. I mean, I had kind of made it because I was a college professor at Temple University.
Hmm.
And then I wrote the book on franchising, which is a whole nother story because that changed my life completely when I was about 30 years old. And so we went around, and because of that book that I wrote and because of franchising, I had a much better life. My mother said, what do you mean you're not going to be a professor? John, you have to be a professor. Mom, I'm not going to be. I'm going to be working in marketing and promoting clients in franchising. And I went from $12,500 to $100,000 a year in a very short period of time. So I knew what I was doing, but she couldn't even say the word or understand what do you know about that? We don't know anything about that. Well, there were no college professors before me either in the family,
Hmm.
but that she could talk about. And people, well, oh, wow, your son's a professor. Wasn't he the dumb fat kid who grew up here who we made fun of? Yeah, that's him. So that voice kind of disappeared because I was making it. I had a lot of
Hmm.
media attention. The book came out. I got these radio phoners that I would do every day. People would call me. I heard you on the radio. Can we bring you to Honolulu to speak at our conference? Can you do this? Can you go there? The International Franchise Association said, will you travel internationally to promote franchising for our trade missions? Wow. I mean, I was going all over the world. And I was broke much of the time, even at that $100,000 range. It was getting clients and taking care of them. And of course, we were doing more now. We were taking vacations for two
Hmm.
weeks on Cape Cod or 3 weeks on Cape Cod. So life did get better. And the voice, maybe I thought I didn't need it as much, or it thought, well, you don't need me as much, but I did. The best 5 years, we had children in the 70s. No, my son was not until into the 80s. And I bought franchises. I became the CEO of Homevestors of America, the We Buy Ugly Houses company. I was the CEO of a company that had 265 franchisees. The Great Recession hits. We took a big plunge financially, almost lost the company, fortunately sold the company. But my goal during this time was always when I left Temple in 85 as a professor, they said, but you're going to be promoted and you're going to make $18,000 a year. And I didn't want to say I already make $100,000 a year. And I had more books that I was doing. And I said, listen, I will come back when I can afford a professor's salary. But I can't do that now. I got kids and
Mhm.
I got things I want to do. So by once we sold the company and it was sold to Fred DeLuca, the co-founder of Subway, who I wrote the book Start Small, Finish Big. That's the Subway story. That's the DeLuca story. And so he bought it, and I knew that I couldn't work for him because we were never friends. I don't know that he had that many friends, particularly not in business. But we got along, and he was an investor in Home Investors when I became the CEO, and then he bought the company. And I stayed for about a year, and he knew, and I knew, I'm going to go back to academia as soon as I can. My kids were pretty much grown now. My oldest was married, and I had grandchildren. And my middle daughter had been married for several years. And my son, unfortunately, we didn't know it for a long time. We were ignorant. This is another book. He was a drug addict, but we didn't know it. He did a great job of hiding it for a long time. And we were very naive because, we gave him money and we bought him cars and we did this and did that. But so when I got an offer to move to Kuwait, and somebody said to me at the time we were living in Dallas, and somebody said to me, Kuwait, is that in West Texas? And I said, well, that's a little further. It's in the Middle East. And of course, I'd never been there. They made me such an offer. And I said to my
Mhm.
wife, I don't know, I could go do it myself for a semester, or we can go together. And we were ready. And we were just at that point in time. We had a beautiful home on about 2 acres of land, just a beautiful place. I built an office in the back of the house and we put that up for sale. Wasn't an ideal time to sell it. Worst thing was we had to give away 2 dogs because
No.
they weren't going to be welcome in Kuwait. And we had to kiss our baby grandbabies goodbye, but we weren't going forever. And I said to her, listen, I have the return tickets. They bought the airfare for us already, round trip. If we
Mhm.
get off and we don't like Kuwait or something's wrong, whether it's a day or three, we'll just come back. I'll quit. We'll be done. I mean, it's Kuwait. Who's going to say anything?
Mhm.
And we'll decide where we want to start all over. We had plenty of money to do that, and we loved it from the moment we stopped off, and it was 120 degrees outside. We loved it. And we arrived during Ramadan, which meant everything was closed during the day. You couldn't
Mhm.
even go to Starbucks until 7 o'clock at night. And at one point, we went to the pool, and I said, Joanne, you can't have this. You can't have a bottle of water. It's daytime. We could get arrested. It's Ramadan. So we learned quickly. We loved it. We made the best friends, all people, many from America, but many from Europe and India. And we had more support there, a better life in Kuwait. I stayed for 7 years. Had she not died in the 6th year, we would probably still be in Kuwait because it is a wonderful life. Guns are banned, drugs are banned. They're both there, but there weren't shootings on the news. You didn't have to worry somebody's going to shoot up your kid's grade school. I mean, they
Yeah.
think we're barbarians. When we first went over there, they said, we love the idea of America, but what's wrong with you all? Shooting up
Mhm.
kids in schools, the drug situation. So at any rate, that wasn't my first loss in our second year of Kuwait. They found a lump in Joanne's in her scan, her breast scans,
Mhm.
mammogram, and they said, but it's very early. You need to have it removed. You'll go through radiation and you'll go through chemo. It's a 10-month protocol. You'll go back to Kuwait because we weren't going to do this in Kuwait. They didn't have the
Mhm.
best medical care, but we had it because I had a business still in America and I had insurance in America. So when she came back to Kuwait, she couldn't wait to get back to Kuwait. She was she was a great pianist, and not only did she play the piano for the church every week, and yes, we were Catholic, and it is a Muslim country, but they have freedom of religion, and we were allowed to be Catholics, and there were a whole lot of
Mhm.
us. There was a cathedral downtown, and she played the piano every week. And then she was offered an opportunity to play the piano during tea time at one of the downtown hotels, and she loved that. She'd never really had a job before, for certainly not professionally in music. So she thrived and I thrived. We together we went to Jerusalem 3 times. We traveled
Mhm.
all over the Middle East, everywhere in the Middle East, and we went places like India, and we went to just a lot of other places that we the money. I was teaching franchising and communications and marketing. Lots of times clients would pay me in cash. There's no tax in Kuwait. So there's no W-2 or a 1099. If you want to know how much you made, you got to track that yourself. It was just a different
Wow.
world. But in our
Yeah.
fourth year, oh, wow, we lost our 34-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, second child. Um, she had a rare disease and was told on a Sunday in Charlotte that she would not survive the week and she needed to call her family. And she said, my parents are in Kuwait. And they said, you need to call them. We'll keep you alive until they get here. But she couldn't tell us until Tuesday. How do you tell your parents by phone or a text
Yeah.
really going to die? You went in for a gallbladder and they discovered she had alpha 1. What? And I'm sure
Yeah.
your viewers are saying, what? Nobody gets
Yeah.
it. What is that? It attacks the kidneys, but it attacked her liver. And she was
Mm.
stage 4 when they discovered it that Sunday. She told us Tuesday. We couldn't get a flight until Thursday. We arrived Holy Friday. It was Easter weekend. We got to the hospital at about noon. She was so brave, had been married 5 years, no children, and said, this is why God did not give me a child. I have been trying all these times, David and I, because I didn't know I was going to die this young and I didn't want to, but God has another plan for me. Oof. And we cried and cried and cried and begged doctors, there's got to be a transplant,
Something.
something. And they
Yeah.
said, they said, you can call these hospitals. It's Easter. You won't get anybody till Monday. She will not be alive on Monday. And then they sent her home Friday afternoon. And we were with her every moment, her mother and I, and her husband and her sister. And at about 5 o'clock on Holy Saturday, she died very
Of
peacefully. We were crushed, of course. You're not supposed to lose
course.
a child. But we did. And Joanne and I held up each other, and we did a great job. 2 years later, Joanne gets news the chemo attacked her bone marrow, and she had to have a bone marrow transplant. And she did. And but she had to be stripped down through chemo, intensive, ugly chemo, in isolation for a long period of time. Her brother donated the bone marrow. Christmas time, we celebrated. This was started in April or May. Christmas, she was cancer free. And then one day in February, we went to the doctor and he said, I am sorry to tell you the cancer has returned with a vengeance. And if you would like, you can go home and we will give you the proper medication to keep you out of pain, but you won't survive a week or two. Or we'll do it all over again. We'll strip you down through chemo. And he said, if it were me, you know how painful it is. I wouldn't do it. If it were my sister, I'd plead with her, let's try one more time. And she looked at me and I said, this is totally your call. I will support you either way. And she said, let's do it again. And we
Mhm.
did. She did. And that was February, early February. I think 3 weeks later, she was dead. She was on life support, I don't know, about 3 days. Fingers turned black, toes turned black, and the doctor said those will have to be amputated. She's going to wake up, but those will have to be amputated. And I said, and she will hate you. She'll never be able to play the piano again. And he said, oh, I didn't know that. And finally, she was brain dead after, I think it was the third day. And yeah, you have to sign those papers and you have to go get strangers in the hospital to witness what you're going to have your wife disconnected.
Yeah.
Oh, that was horrible.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Kuwait, even though Kuwait said, no, 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 this was February. You need to just come back in July, come and teach summer. Don't come
Mhm.
back now. And I said, listen, I have nothing to do in the United States. My wife is dead. And I went back in May to finish the spring semester. And when I got back, I collapsed in our villa because I knew everything there was her. She did all the decorating, and we traveled together. I had no family there, and I just collapsed and said, "What am I doing here? I can't do
Mhm.
this." And I was then, I wasn't depressed. I was just sad. And within a week, I get a text from Ray Titus, major franchisor in West Palm Beach. He had been my client, still was my client. He would hire me to speak at franchise events, and his company was my sponsor. And he said, I just gave $1.5 million to this little university in West Palm Beach that you wouldn't know about. And they, in order for them to open a center to teach college kids about franchising, because college kids don't know about franchising. They come out with a degree in marketing, but they're absolutely of no help to me. I want to hire them. I need them. I need marketing people, HR people, management people, international people, but I have to spend 6 months to a year teaching them about franchising,
Yeah.
the university to teach them about franchising. And he said, the president said, we need a PhD for academic reasons. If you don't have a PhD, they don't, you're not going to make the cut. And this was going to be an AACSB accredited university.
Mhm.
He has to have a PhD. He has to be able to teach franchising. And he has to be a Christian. He wants to teach at a Christian university. And Ray said, I know our guy. Just got to convince him to come home from Kuwait. So, there
Mhm.
was God again coming, to my rescue.
Yeah. So
And
so you've been through this loss of your daughter and your loss of your wife. Where's your drug addicted
one more
son
to
in all
come.
this?
Yeah, one more to come. When you have a drug addict in the family, and people don't understand this, but a psychiatrist told me one day when he wanted me to pay for my son to go into another rehab,
Hmm.
that by this time we had cut him off on the advice of a drunk who was the manager of the sober house that my son was living in. And he said to me, how does John afford that truck he drives? Well,
Hmm.
it's mine. How does John pay the rent here when he doesn't have a consistent job? And I said, yeah, I pay it. And he said, don't take this the wrong way. I'm an alcoholic recovering. If you were my father, I'd still be out there on the curb drunk. You're enabling your son. And the best thing you can
Hmm.
do is cut him off. And I went home and told my wife that. And she said, if you're ready, I'm ready. And she loved, and I loved him. She loved
Of
him more than
course.
his mother. He was our only
Yeah.
son. And he loved his mother for the first till he got the drugs. And then
Mm.
we didn't know if he'd kill us for money.
Right.
And so when you live with, and so the psychiatrist, before we went to Kuwait, and part of going to Kuwait was we will worry about John, but he won't break into our home anymore. He won't
Hmm.
steal our checks and write. He stole $50,000. He has my name. He was a junior.
Yeah.
Got $50,000 out of my bank account until the bank finally realized this might not be the right John Hayes.
Yeah.
They paid all that back, fortunately. So we went to Kuwait and we left. And I said, okay, it's because the psychiatrist said, if you don't pay for this, you are going to regret it because this is going to end. Take it from me. This is my life is dedicated to drug addicts and working with them. He is going to die in an overdose. He's going to get killed in a drug deal. He's going to go to prison because he's going to kill somebody.
Mhm.
There is a very slight chance that if he goes to this rehab, which is a 6 month program, if he really decides to do it, that's where the survivors are, the ones who recover. And so I did.
Mhm.
And we went to Kuwait and thought he's in the best place. And he was for a while. And when I had to take Joanne back to Dallas when she had leukemia, he showed up. And for a year, taking 2 buses, he stayed clean to visit his mother every day that he was allowed there, or that I was allowed, or anyone was allowed.
Mhm.
He had family caregivers when I couldn't be there because I was traveling back and forth from Kuwait. And John was always there. And she died knowing he was sober and I could take care of him. Not that I had to take care of him. He got a job, a good job,
Mhm.
moved into my uh, condo that I'd bought close to the hospital. But as soon as I went to Florida, he relapsed and I cut him off again. And then he died in October of pandemic year 2020. And when I got the call, I was already living in Florida. And when I got that call from the coroner, um, I didn't fall apart. And I called my daughter, who is now the surviving child. She lost two
Mhm.
siblings and her mother. And her response was much like mine. We knew this was coming. We knew it every day. We held our breath. We hope he doesn't kill anybody in the process, for which we're going to feel worse. But we had already lost John when he was about 16, 17 years old and became a
Yeah.
drug. He died at 34. Uh, Unintentional overdose. He had a great job helping, planning to help a guy franchise a food truck, kept me in touch. Uh, he was living in Austin, Texas. But still, I don't know why. I heard from him on a Saturday night. How do you think Trump did in the debate? This was 2020. And I hadn't answered him, which was not unusual. I mean, every 2 or 3 days. And I got the call on Tuesday that he was dead. So I have 3 of them buried together. And people often ask me, how do you smile? And how did you carry on? How are you able to get out of bed? And I have a very strong faith that goes back to Dover, Ohio, the nuns, my Italian family, my Irish family, my almost abusive childhood with a voice that said, you're going to be okay. No matter what, you're going to be okay. And I say that to myself right now a lot because this was very unhappy. Who loses 2 kids and a wife in a span of about, well, my wife and my daughter were 2 years apart. And then John was about 6 years. And I didn't have him in my life all that time. I mean, I hated that. I was angry. How can you, how could you do this to your mother? How could you do this to me?
Mhm. Well, and I think so many people, I have had drug addiction in my family. I've lost a cousin to it and another cousin who's been in and out of prison. And it's such a misunderstood thing if you haven't experienced it. There's a lot of judgment, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Oh,
guilt, there's so much
yeah.
weight with that. And, one of the things that I've always found is complicated relationships in life make complicated relationships in death because there's so many things that will never be resolved.
Right.
And so navigating that and on top of the other two losses.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you say, what does get you through that? Is it the faith? I mean, that voice, to me, it's such an interesting thing because this is kind of a book to me. This voice that has just followed you through this thread of
Yeah.
your life and come around almost,
It's there when I need it. If
it's
I
there when
listen,
you need it, and you know it's there when you need it.
yeah,
And it's
if I
telling
listen,
you before any of this even happens that no matter what, you're going to be okay. And
there are times,
somehow you believe that.
yes, and there are times in my, there were times, there still are times in my life when my success will drown out any voice because,
Mm,
wow, who would ex who would have expected this of me?
mhm,
Um, I've had some celebration in my career. I have done things that others have not done.
mhm,
And I've had a very satisfying life in so many ways, except those deaths were the hardest. And when I, not everybody's a believer, so this doesn't help people who aren't. Drop to your knees and pray.
yeah.
And God will pull you through another day. I still have that at times when I see a movie. There are some movies that just gut me over the loss of my kids. How
Yeah.
could I lose those kids?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
fair.
It's not, it's unimaginable.
No, that was God. If you love me so much, why would you take my
Yeah.
kids? I hate it.
Mhm.
But God has a plan, as my daughter said. God has a different plan for me.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have four beautiful grandchildren. How my surviving daughter has managed to bring up those four kids. And I live in fear.
I'm
I
sure.
don't want them to be involved in drugs in any way.
Yeah.
My youngest had his heart broken by some girl. Uh, I told my daughter, don't ever point that girl out to me if I'm
Right.
in town. I don't like her.
Yeah. You are
Because
fiercely protective,
yeah,
probably even
I
more than
am.
you've ever
But I
been.
mean, they're growing up. They're 22, 23 down to like 16.
Yeah.
And
And you have a beautiful wife now that you've had for quite a few
yes,
years.
yeah, and that again was the gift, the
Mm.
voice. Uh, we met online. Yuck. Who does that? Well, you did too, and a
I
lot of
did
people
too. It's
do.
okay. Yeah.
But no, that's not how you meet a wife. Come on, no, no, no. But yep,
These days.
you. It was much. Yeah, she was just wow, uh, knocked me off my feet, and it took a while to find her, but I found her.
Yeah.
So and she can't fully identify. 'Cause thank God she has two sons and hasn't lost a child. She lost a husband 20
Mm.
some years ago. So she identifies with how that, and that's enough. Lose a spouse,
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It shapes how you view everything. So,
yeah,
John, in terms of this theme that we have on the gift of the struggle, as I always say, there is absolutely no gift of the loss of a child or the loss of a spouse or
yeah.
sick child or any of those things. There's no gift in that specific thing, but there are gifts that surround those situations. So, what are the gifts that you have been given from surviving these experiences that have informed the way that you look at life or the way that you live your life differently because of those things?
So let's take drugs, which I thank God I have. Well, I was like Clinton. I didn't inhale. I think I might have. I don't. But I was in college, and but
Right.
I never did any drugs consistently. John was doing the worst stuff,
Yeah.
and that's why he needed $50,000 to support his cocaine habit.
Mhm.
And when you grow up through it, it was hard to find help. First of all, for us, not for him, for us.
Hmm.
First of all, we didn't know until 2 or 3 years into it, until a girlfriend tipped us off. John is using drugs. What? He has to go to rehab. Like, okay, now suddenly we were the no better than the worst of families. Our son was going to rehab. We didn't want anybody to know this.
Right.
So we didn't think well of ourselves. And of course, we blamed ourselves. And our first question
Hmm.
with him was always, what did we do to you? We gave you
Right.
everything. And maybe that's what we
Hmm.
did. And he would say, it wasn't you. But
Yeah.
he'd never say, was it a girl? Was it a guy? Was it abuse? Was it something we don't know something about? We never got that answer.
Yeah.
And we always wondered, must have been us. So we went to counseling, but I don't know, either we didn't go the right places. They told us to watch this TV show that's about drug addiction.
Mm.
That it was popular at the time. And so
Yeah.
we couldn't get help. We didn't understand what was, we were so naive. He had
Hmm.
access to Joanne's checkbook, and the bank wouldn't call us. He was signing her name until one day the bank thought that was suspicious. And yeah, that's suspicious. And then we found out another bank, he stole 50,000 out of my account. And
Hmm.
you're faced with the bank wants to know you will testify against your son.
Right.
Yeah, of course. I'm so angry. And then
Yeah.
his attorney, who was a what's that called when you don't have any money for an attorney, you're
Oh,
assigned
public defender.
a public defender. She called me and she said, please, please do not cooperate with the bank. If he goes to prison, he will be lost. And if you will let me work with him, I can get him. This now is not another rehab that we're talking about. None of the rehabs worked. He blew them all. There's a special rehab that he can get into. And if you allow me to do that, the judge is very sympathetic. So, okay, okay, yeah, we don't want him to go to prison. And I didn't cooperate with the bank. As it turned out, the bank didn't bring charges against him anyway. They said, it's $50,000. That's not enough. FBI's
Hmm.
not interested. And so he went to that rehab. And he was so angry. And so we would go visit him, and he would be just, we would leave in tears. And so we would say, we can't keep doing this to ourselves. This is worse than dying ourselves. And now we had no death yet. We didn't lose anybody yet.
Right.
But we were tortured. And then he's living in
Yeah.
halfway houses, and it was the progression of that. Well, I do not give money to people who beg for it on the streets because that was my son. And I know what he's going to do. I knew what he was doing with the money, and I suspect what they did
Right.
with the money. So I
Hmm.
don't do that. So does that make me a cold, wrong, hard-hearted person? Even my son told me never give those people money. They're all
Yeah.
drug abusers, and you're just enabling them. So no,
Hmm.
I can easily drive by, have a guy show me a sign when I'm stopped at the light, just ignore him. Uh, that's just the way it is. But I am much more sensitive to parents of drug addicts. I understand. And the sooner you can stop funding them. And my son told me, took years when he was clean, and he said, the best thing you and mom did was when you told me there's no more money for you.
Hmm.
Now he ended up in jail, and he ended up in psychiatric wards, and wasn't pretty, but we never went to his rescue ever again.
Yeah.
Also, people think you're what a SOB you are. No, I wasn't. I did the right thing. My wife, we did the right thing. We also
Hmm.
anticipated John will either go to prison or he will be dead. And we just hope he doesn't kill anyone. So that there's a lot of praying that goes with that. there's a lot of support that um, that I am sensitive to the Salvation Army, as
Hmm.
they do rescue people like my son, and they did rescue my son in numerous ways, but they also hold you accountable. I think that's the best program. So I support programs that I would never have been. You're a drug addict, you're the lowest. Well, you're not, and the rehabs aren't either. And they have great people who work in those rehabs. And so I'm much more, that's the gift of John. Uh, maybe that's not much of a gift, but because there's not really understanding yet to this day why he did that.
Yeah. And well, and it may be an unanswerable question because
It
I think
is.
every parent or every family member who
Yes.
has someone going through that sort of thing, I don't know. I think it probably is somewhat individual. I don't think you get a good answer. I think once they're in, it takes over and it self-perpetuates. You don't necessarily get that answer, but I do think what you're saying, the stigma
Yeah.
of the person, the
Yeah.
child or the adult and the
And people know
family and
when
the
you're the
shame.
parent, you know people are saying, what did you do wrong?
Yeah.
Your son
But
is
it affects almost every family
terrible.
in one way or the other, whether it's a child or
Terrible.
a cousin, like in my,
Yeah. And I've been
every
able to help
nobody.
some parents
Yeah.
understand it the way that I do. The gift is also how I would be close to my grandchildren anyway, but I'm their surviving grandparent. And it should be my wife because she was much better at it than I am. But they love me and I love them. And I'm constantly praying for them to protect them. And I share that with them. And I want them to know you need faith to survive whatever is coming. Whether, divorce isn't pretty, abuse isn't pretty, drugs are everywhere.
Yeah.
There's danger in this world, and you need the voice and you need the faith to protect and arm yourself. And I constantly am doing that with my grandkids. And I know
So
they
do you
see,
think, yeah, do you think that through these experiences your faith has strengthened? Because I think in a lot of people's experiences that sometimes it breaks.
yeah, and I've come close at times. I don't know that that's really accurate because I have cried and shouted and screamed and said, what good has this faith done me to
Mhm.
lose my children? And then I realized, this was God's plan. Wait a minute, God doesn't take children. Well, it may be Satan's plan, but God also permits these things to happen. There's lessons in all of this that I have to pay attention to. And I can't do that without faith. So
Mhm.
I know God doesn't want to hurt anyone,
Right.
but we're not promised a rose garden. We're not promised that we won't have great disappointment in our lives. It's how we handle those disappointments that we better be prepared for.
Right. And so how do you handle them differently now, having been through all of this?
Sometimes not very well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm still as bad as anybody else. But if I catch myself and the voice catches me, I know I'm going to be okay, even though I'm going to be different and I'm going to be without something. I know that that you can't fight this. You cannot fight God's will. You can't fight. You can fight learning the lessons. You can avoid, but if you won't do the pain, and I'm faster to get to the pain, because if you won't do that, there's no reward on the other
Right.
end. There's just more pain.
Yeah.
So
I
whatever.
call it embracing your reality. If you embrace it and go through it rather than try to avoid
Boy,
it.
that is very good. Embracing your reality. That is a great term because in situations where I'm with people who do not embrace their reality, I see the pain
Mhm.
and you can't save that person.
Mhm.
They've got to
Yeah.
come to grips with it. Faith makes it easier because you get the message faster.
Yeah. And one thing I think I've tried to figure out with these interviews is sometimes when I go through something, I don't know what the gift is, but
Yeah.
I know there will always be a gift of the struggle. I might just haven't maybe I haven't figured it out yet, or maybe it hasn't been revealed to me yet, or whatever it is. But
Exactly.
if you believe that, that's another layer of faith in there, I think, believing that there will be a gift of it and you will at some point understand what that is. And even if it is only surviving so someone else knows they can, right?
Yeah.
Because I think so many people, you've continued to live your life, you've continued to grow the Titus Center, and you've graduated more and more
Yeah.
kids from this program every year. You've found happiness with Sandra. You've embraced the joy of your grandchildren. I mean, you haven't stopped living your life.
No.
And that's a big.
I love that, franchising changes people's lives. I know this is a whole different
Mhm,
topic. I was given the gift to come here and create the Titus Center from scratch. It had nothing.
mhm,
And the university, by the way, gave me no money. Ray Titus endowed a fund that until it started generating some interest, and that was only in the last couple of years that it was significant enough for the university to say, we're going to give you some of that money. I had to go raise the money to build the Titus Center. And there are
mhm,
gifts with that and lessons that I learned. I'm not a fundraiser. I didn't take the job to do that. In fact, they didn't tell me that I had to raise the funds until I was already here. And I went out and did that. This past year, once again, I raised enough that I had a $100,000 surplus. I've done that 2 to 3 years.
mhm,
Big gain is not the money. It has allowed us to do things for students that they don't even know will happen when they come to college, because nobody comes to college to study franchising. They come to study marketing. And then I say to them, good luck getting a job with a
right.
marketing degree today. You're going to be
Yeah.
competing with 400 other people. But if you
Mhm,
combine the concentration in franchising, it will get you a job. I guarantee it. And I have every year. So I've taught for 25 years, 8 of them at PBA. Prior to that, I don't think I ever had a student or a student's parent at graduation come up to me and say, you changed my son's life. Thank you.
mhm.
I get it every year that I'm at PBA. That is the greatest gift. Now, not, of course, if my wife hadn't died, I'd be in Kuwait. I wouldn't be here. Uh, yeah, the coming to the Titus Center, building it, the opportunity,
Yeah.
even like
Well, and
West Palm Beach, Florida. I don't like the weather, but here I am. And I built a
yeah,
program that is so rewarding.
yeah. And when you think of it like that, I wrote an article one time called Why My Divorce Made My Dreams Come True.
Yeah,
Because
I kind of remember that. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been put in certain situations without that experience.
Yes.
And as we said before, there's never a gift of a loss of a person or a spouse, but
Yeah. They come
you've
after.
taken those experiences and
Yeah.
you've allowed them to steer you
Yeah.
in a direction you would never have been.
Mm,
And so I think, when I listen to you talk and the joy that you express over the franchising and the joy that you express over changing these kids' lives,
yeah.
that's part of the gift too. There's still joy to be had, right? You can go through all of those things
Tremendous.
and
Yeah.
still be just as passionate about this as you were,
Yeah.
when you came to Florida and
Yeah.
before.
Yes. There's nothing like a young person when they say or they write, thank you. You changed my life. I didn't come here to study franchising. Thank you for showing up in my life.
Hmm. That's everything.
Yeah. And you'll few professors ever get that, let
Yeah.
alone every year. Yeah, it's one of the things that keeps me. Well, I'm going to continue teaching as long as I can teach, but I'm not going to run the Titus Center soon because it is a ton of work.
Yeah.
And at my stage of life, I want to back off a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Enjoy yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Enjoy your wife a little bit more. Well, John, I can't thank you enough for sharing this. I think it's inspiring um, to see you this joyful and passionate about things you still have ahead of you after everything you've been through is a testament. It's a testament to your faith. It's a testament to your character. It's a testament to the voice.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the chubby high school kid who didn't think he was going anywhere. I mean,
No, yeah,
yeah,
I hope it touches someone because it makes these things even more worthwhile when, somewhere down the road you hear because of that, because
mm,
of Elizabeth inviting you on that program, because of Elizabeth's story. I mean, you would get this a lot. You're doing these all the time. This is the gift of the gift that people are going to tell you that made a difference in my life. And that's really what we're here for, to make.
yeah, and that is. And I think as humans, it's important to share that. One of the nicest things somebody said to me who I interviewed was she had gone through a whole lot of loss in COVID and she had long COVID. She was just struggling. And she said, I asked to interview her and she said, I need a couple of months and then I'll get back with you. And so she did. And when she did, she said, it had never occurred to me that there could be a gift in what I was going through until you said that. And that was gratifying to me because I think sometimes it's just about framing it,
Yeah,
in a way that you can continue to move forward. So thank
awesome.
you for that gift
Yeah,
for other
thank you.
people. And I look forward to chatting the next time.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.